Namaskar. Welcome to Prakash on Basics. The Upanishads form the core of Indian philosophy. It's a vast storehouse of knowledge, not just the information. It involves higher levels of learning, synthesis, analysis, and extrapolation. It's a gradual, stepwise process, understanding, systematically studying, and then putting it to practice. I'll try and simplify things and put down the basic information related to the process of studying the Upanishads themselves. We need to look at the way they were studied in the early days. About 2000 years back, till about a few 500 years back. We'll also look into the requirements that were expected out of both the teachers and the students in the process of studying them. Realize that at that time there were no books, no texts. So the Guru Parampara was the only way of teaching from Guru to the student, from the master to the disciple. Studying Upanishads was not meant for everyone. It was not a part of regular studies. It was meant only for those found to be capable of grasping the higher concepts. There were other names for it suitably named. It was known as Rahasya Jnana or the Gud Dhyan, the secretive hidden knowledge. Also, the gurus had their own personal viewpoints and likes. They preferred certain Vedas or certain texts. They were usually experts in specific particular areas. So their students usually got an insight with a particular direction associated with their teacher. Uh, to understand how this works out, let's take an example from today's times. Suppose I plan to go and see the Khajuraho temple. There are many ways I can do that. I could go alone, or maybe just happen to be around and have a look at it. I could plan, I could read up a book and then go and see it. I could go there, take a government approved guide who would give me all the details and the necessary information about the complete temple itself. I could have gone with one of my Indology teachers who would be able to give me a more insight into the heritage and other areas. If I go there with Natarajan, my engineer friend, he would tell me uh, the engineering aspects of that temple. If I go with an architect, naturally, I would have a different viewpoint. I could go with a Jain friend of mine, and he would take me away from that Khajuraho body of temples and take me to the Jain temples which are next door, and they are equally beautiful. So I would have a totally different area of thought along with him. I could have gone with somebody who has multiple aspects of intelligence among the ones that I mentioned just above. Um, let's also think maybe I took my grandson along. He's a bright kid, but he wouldn't really grasp all the ideas because he's not mature enough. He's still too young to understand many of the aspects related. So, taking into account all this, we realize that there are many ways in which any particular information, even that of Upanishads, and not one but 108, as I said, that can be looked into. Using the same Upanishads, different philosophers in India uh, developed different philosophies. the Dvait, the Advait, the Vishishtadvait, the Dvaitadvait, and so many more. I'll go into details of some of them sometime later. Uh, so the Guru as well as the disciple needed to have a particular direction of thought and also needed to have certain standards in order to teach and to receive knowledge. First of all, the Guru had to be an expert in Vedas. Um, he had to be well versed in many other related texts also, like the Shruti, which is the Ved, the Smruti, the other corresponding texts, and the Puranas also. And only then could he impart the right knowledge to his students. From among his students, he would have to choose the best, the Shishyotam, as it was meant, um, the one whom he knew in terms of his potentials the best. Also, occasionally, his son, his nephew, and in some cases, even his wife. Remember what happened in case of Drona. He taught the Brahmastra to Arjun, who was his best student, and he also taught it to Ashwathama, who was his son. These disciples are the ones who would receive the Upanishad and knowledge, also had to be perfect in many ways. Uh, First of all, they are expected to have a desire to gain higher knowledge of the Jnana Kand or the knowledge based area. He should have studied Vedas up to the Upanishads. He must be a sadhak capable of listening, that is Shravana, contemplating, that is Manana, and of Nididhyasan, having undeterred, dedicated desire and zest to learn. He must also be totally engrossed, and the word for it is known as samadhi, having no thoughts elsewhere. It's like a person sitting in a temple. He was praying very loudly and was distracting everybody else. Somebody walked in and said, I'll take your mind and thoughts away. He said, you can't do that because my thoughts are locked up in the slippers that I have left outside and I'm worried if they would get stolen. Same thing happens to us many times. You plan on meditating or doing something seriously, and then you recollect that maybe I have left the door open, maybe the gas is on, maybe the doorbell is ringing and I have not been attending. So there are so many distractions. You need to overcome all of them. The student should have crossed the threshold of karma kanda, that is the ritual area. He must have crossed the upasana or the prayer level also, and must be able to move into the next step. He must be one who has realized the futility of attachments and desires. The word for it is vairagya. Remember, Buddha, Gautam Buddha, and even Mahavir, when they got their vairagya, they broke away from their family life at around the same age, around 30, and took to the path of a search for new knowledge. The student is also expected to have kshama, dhamma, and sanyama. Uh, Kshama means he must have pacified or overcome all his desires. He can't just take a break whenever he wants to. There's a cricket match planned, so I'll start thinking about that and then give up on what I'm reading just now. Is not allowed. I can't plan the food and the other items for a party that I'm arranging while I'm meditating. So he has to overcome or he must pacify all these. The second term is dhamma. It comes from damana, that is to squash one's cravings, one's drawbacks. and concentrate on what one is doing. And the word Sayama actually means with yama. This is the same that has been mentioned by Patanjali in the beginning of his Yoga Sutra. The first aspect, which deals with the personal attributes: ahimsa, satya, asteya, aparigraha, and brahmacharya. Ahimsa, not harming or damaging anyone. Satya, resorting to the truth at all times. Asteya, not coveting anything else, not stealing anything. Aparigraha, and brahmacharya, which is abstinence. Uh, all these were naturally later on used by other religions, but named in a different way rather than the yama that Patanjali had mentioned. Uh, this student is supposed to be determined seeker of knowledge, an achiever. The word is associated with nishchayena, determined, that I used when we defined Upanishads. He must be a sthita prajna, that means of stable intellect, capable of unbiased, logical, rational thinking, capable of the madhyama marga, the central path, away from the extreme decisions used by many others again. He must be capable of distinguishing between what is permanent and what is fleeting, what is everlasting and what is temporary. Only then can he grasp the concepts of Atma, Brahma, Maya, Pradnyan, and many others that are the core and the basic areas covered in the Upanishads. It's quite a lot. Let's try and introspect. Uh, do I have all these qualities? But then these are meant for serious Vedantins or dedicated followers. But why am I into all this? Why am I doing all this? Is a question that we must ask ourselves. Is it because I'm at an age to do all this? Is it because there's nothing else for me to do than study Upanishads now in my later part of life? Or is it because it's a trend, it's a fashion to know about Upanishads? Or am I doing it because others are doing it also? Then in that case, how do I go about studying them now? First, we need to set our objectives very clearly in front of us. Whether I'm doing it to understand this heritage of my nation, or am I into this to study them extensively in as much details as possible. In both cases, today we have a situation far simpler than the one that I was talking of in the previous statements. Many of the requirements for the students that I mentioned are no longer a constraint today. And we have many other advantages also. Our knowledge sources are vast, right from a variety of gurus to Google. We have books, original text in Sanskrit, and translations in any language of your own choice. From originals to translations, from simplified text to simplified talks, there are so many sources to gain knowledge from. We have a variety of interpretations from the last 2000 years by the various santas or saints and others who have been commenting on these texts. Also, there are no age restrictions now. I can start studying them anytime. We are free to follow a multiple of viewpoints. We are not restricted to our own guru as it was done in the previous case. We have an open choice in front of us. And also, um, there's a potential issue. Not all of us can become Shankaracharyas for Upanishads or Vivekananda for Upanishads, or for that matter, in any other situation like Usain Bolt and run at a very high pace. But we can always reach the best we can. No one can prevent us from trying to reach our best potentials, our best levels. And that is for our personal satisfaction. And that then must be the true objective of trying to understand Upanishads now. So we need to understand them from multiple gurus, from multiple sources, to get a better picture of the basic Upanishadan concepts. A guide, a guru in any of these forms will definitely facilitate our assimilation of knowledge. As long as there is desire to gain knowledge, all efforts are going to be good. So let's start. I'll provide the basics and then you dive deep on your own in, in this vast sea of knowledge. All you need is a strong desire to learn and understand. If you liked whatever I have said, please do subscribe and like this channel and tell your friends. Let them also gain this beautiful knowledge from the Upanishads. Till we meet again in the next step, Namaskar.